Hey YouTube, this is Zach with Achilles Financial, and today we're going to be talking about Apple as they announce earnings this week on the 28th. Some of the things that we're going to be looking for are iPhone sales, 5G rollout, as well as share buyback plans. As you can see right now, they are currently expecting right at 98 to 99 cents for the earnings estimate this week, which is going to be right at a 50% increase over what they saw in Q2 last year. Keep in mind they had a massive win in Q1 in terms of their earnings year over year. There has been some major growth in the stock price over the past year, and I'm interested to see how that carries forward. During the same time period, they did have a big run-up due to the fact that they did have a share split where the stock price actually went down from a price perspective, but that was because the shares were getting split into a much smaller amount. So as you can see on the 3-year chart, the stock has continued to grow at an exponential rate, and that's something that we're looking to see. Will that continue going forward? If we look at it over a little bit more timely period, key being year to date, Apple's in a very strong position this week, and there are going to be a number of other tech earnings that could point to some strong growth. Some other items that we want to be looking to is the fact that they do have the Federal Reserve meetings this week, and they are going to be talking, and generally speaking, when the Federal Reserve is speaking, it tends to bode well for the stock market because they've continued to say that they are going to do what it takes to support the economy. They're going to do what it takes to continue printing money, as well as the fact that they're going to continue to essentially support the stock market is really what's actually happening here. So some of the things that I want to talk about, because we are in kind of this holding pattern over the past week of really staying in that 130 to 135 bracket, is are they going to increase from an earnings perspective? You can see last earnings, the stock actually fell following those earnings. Are we going to see a return back to all-time highs, or are we going to drop down back into that holding pattern we saw of the 120 to 125 range? So some of the key announcements that we're going to be looking for are actually going to be associated with not necessarily the business model from a company perspective, but what Apple is planning on doing with all of this cash. So you can see that they have, we'll look at the annual basis, you can see that they have north of $90 billion in cash sitting at the end of their fiscal year last September. However, when we look at that on a quarterly basis, you can see that there was a pretty significant drop from Q4 to Q1. This is largely being driven by the fact that they are seeking to continue buying back their shares of stock. So when companies do buyback, it decreases the outstanding share volume. So if we go back to summary, you can see that they have about 16.8 billion shares outstanding. So when you decrease that, the remaining shares are worth more. So there's less dilution. So normally when the stock when a company issues more shares, the stock value will decrease because, again, there's more dilution. When companies like Apple are going out and buying back their shares, then the stock value goes up. So that's what we're looking to see on this quarter-over-quarter basis is, are they going to showcase how much of the shares have been bought back at this point in time, or if they're going to increase the amount of the shares that are going to be purchased. Right now, the expectation is that a total of 3% of total outstanding shares are going to be bought back. So depending on that volume or that number is going to really showcase what they can expect from a stock perspective. The other item that I would highlight is their income has just ballooned over the course of the past year. I'll point that on the annual basis. So as the company continues to earn more and more, what are they doing with that excess cash? Because not only are they becoming more profitable as time goes on, but they're figuring out how can we transition from this high growth stage to more of a value-based company where they're returning that money back to shareholders. So if we look at this on a quarterly basis, Apple does issue a quarterly dividend. Over the past 2 years, they have increased their dividend in the single percentage points basis. So you can see if we go down here below, that dividend has continued to be increased over time. This is the EPS side. Here's the dividend side. So last dividend we saw increase was back last year when we went from 19 cents a share to 21 cents a share. What's expected to be potentially happening this year is to see a double-digit increase in the overall dividend. So double-digit percentage-wise would be anything from 2 cents to 3 cents. I'd be surprised if we saw more than that on the quarterly basis. On the annual basis, though, it makes sense. So that's what we're going to be looking for. If you want to see what the total dividend is for Apple, right now it's at 82 cents. I would be not surprised to see it go up to 90 cents. So that's from a balance sheet perspective. Really what the stock is looking for is to see if we're going to see an increase in the total money that is being allocated to shareholders via buybacks as well as dividend increases. From an earnings perspective, and again, we'll go back to how they're growing from a revenue perspective, the key items that we're going to be looking for are going to be iPhone sales as well as 5G rollout. The big reason that we're going to be looking at iPhone sales is because iPhone for Apple is nearly 60% of their total revenue. And as they continue to release these new products, they will continue to diversify, but right now the iPhone is still expected to be the big winner here. And that 5G iPhone rollout is what they're looking for to be the end-all be-all from a sales perspective. The key thing that we need to look for is the pricing of any of those new iPhone sales. Would there be a decrease? Would there be an increase with those 5G products? The other thing that we currently want to look at is going to be, are they bringing on more users? If they can bring on more users, then we're going to continue to see some of that growth in the overall top line sales perspective. So these are just a few of the items that I think are going to weigh heavily on the overall stock price. If a lot of this becomes favorable, and if they don't have any issues from a chip shortage perspective, which is always going to be a key concern for a company like Apple, if none of those issues come to the forefront, I think we're going to see strong Apple earnings, and that could see them go from anywhere between $134 a share to testing those all-time highs where we saw back as north of $140 a share, nearly $145 a share. So that's something to watch, something that we'll be considering as time moves forward. And I'm interested to see, again, if we see that dividend increase, if we see strong iPhone sales, and if we see an additional allotment of cash to the share buyback program, we could see very strong growth in Apple over the course of the next quarter. All that being said, this is what I'm watching. I'm by no means a financial advisor. I'm just some guy on YouTube. But if you found this content helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you want to talk to us more in depth, feel free to check out the Discord down below. Thanks. Talk to you later.